sat in the front pew, the wood cold beneath me, and stared at the closed casket. My son, my Marcelo, gone at 42. The funeral home smelled like lilies and floor polish, and somewhere behind me, someone was crying softly. I couldn't cry, not yet. The shock had wrapped itself around my chest like iron bands, squeezing so tight I could barely breathe. The priest's voice droned on, words about peace and eternity, but all I could hear was the hollow thud of my own heartbeat. Then I felt a hand on my shoulder. I turned. Juliana, my daughter-in-law, stood there in a black dress that looked too expensive, too new. Her eyes were dry. "Marta," she said, her voice flat. "We need to talk. After this." I nodded, confused. "Talk about what? Arrangements? The house?" I turned back to the casket, my hands trembling in my lap. What I didn't know was that in less than an hour, I would be standing in my own living room, listening to the woman my son married tell me I had 30 days to get out, 30 days to leave the house where I raised Marcelo, where his first steps echoed down the hallway, where his laughter once filled every corner. And what I really didn't know, what would take me weeks to uncover, was that the man in that casket didn't die of a heart attack at all. If you're new here, please subscribe. This channel is just getting started, and every day we're sharing stories that need to be told. Stories like this one. My name is Marta. I'm 68 years old. I worked as a school teacher for 40 years, retired 5 years ago, and spent most of my life in the same small house on the edge of São Paulo. My husband died when Marcelo was 12. After that, it was just the two of us. We were close, or at least I thought we were. Marcelo grew up kind, quiet, the kind of boy who brought home injured birds and tried to nurse them back to health. He became an engineer, worked hard, saved money. He bought his own apartment downtown when he was 30. I was proud, so proud. When he met Juliana 3 years ago, I was happy for him. She was younger, 35 to his 39, confident, beautiful. She worked in marketing, always dressed well, always knew the right thing to say. She smiled a lot in the beginning. I remember thinking, finally, he won't be alone. They got married a year later. Small ceremony, just close family and friends. I gave them my blessing. I even helped pay for part of the wedding. Juliana seemed grateful then. She hugged me, called me Mom, said she was lucky to have me. Juliana moved into Marcelo's apartment downtown, and I stayed in the house. We saw each other on Sundays sometimes, but over the last year, something changed. Marcelo started looking tired, pale. His skin had a grayish tint that worried me. He complained about stomach pains, headaches, nausea. He'd lost weight. His shirts hung loose on his frame. I told him to see a doctor. He said he had. They told him it was stress. Work was demanding. He was managing a big project. The doctors ran some basic tests. Nothing showed up. They gave him antacids and sent him home. I wanted to believe them, but a mother knows. Something was wrong. The last time I saw him conscious was on a Sunday afternoon. He came to visit, but he could barely make it up the front steps. His face was ashen. He sat at the kitchen table, his hands shaking as he lifted the coffee cup I'd made him. He took one sip and set it down. "Mom," he said, his voice hoarse, "I don't feel good." "You need to go back to the doctor," I said. "Demand more tests. This isn't normal." He nodded, but his eyes were distant, afraid. "Marcelo, what's wrong?" "Really wrong?" He looked at me for a long moment. Then he glanced toward the door, as if checking to make sure we were alone. "I think," he started, then stopped. "Never mind. I'm just being paranoid." "Tell me." He shook his head. "I need to go. Juliana's expecting me." He stood, kissed my forehead, and left. I watched him from the window as he walked slowly to his car, one hand pressed against his stomach. Something inside me screamed that I should stop him, make him stay, call an ambulance. But I didn't. Then 2 weeks ago, I got the call. Juliana's voice on the other end, shaking. Or was she? Looking back now, I'm not sure it was real emotion or performance. "Marta, Marcelo collapsed. They're taking him to the hospital." I grabbed my purse and ran. My neighbor drove me. I couldn't think straight enough to drive myself. The whole way there I prayed, "Please, God, please let him be okay." But by the time I got there, he was gone. Heart attack, they said. 42 years old. No warning. The doctor, young, exhausted, told me his heart just stopped. Sometimes it happens. Stress, genetics. Bad luck. I didn't believe it. But what could I do? I was just his mother. The widow gets the final say. And Juliana had already signed the papers. No autopsy. She said she couldn't bear the thought of them cutting into him. I sat beside his body in the hospital room for an hour, holding his cold hand, whispering apologies for things I couldn't name. I should have insisted he see a better doctor. I should have visited more. I should have made him stay that Sunday. I should have known something was wrong. The guilt ate at me like acid. The funeral was 3 days later. I wore the same black dress I wore to my husband's funeral 26 years ago. It still fit. That felt wrong somehow, as if time should have changed me more. The service was small. Marcelo didn't have many friends. He'd always been quiet, kept to himself. His co-workers came. A few neighbors. My sister flew in from Rio. She held my hand during the service, but neither of us spoke. I sat in the front pew and tried to focus on the priest's words, but they slid past me like water. All I could see was the casket. All I could think was, my boy is in there. My boy is gone. The service ended. People filed out slowly, shaking my hand, murmuring condolences. I'm so sorry. He was a good man. Too young. I barely heard them. I stood near the casket, one hand resting on the polished wood, trying to memorize the shape of it, trying to hold on. Juliana appeared beside me again. This time, she wasn't alone. A man stood next to her, tall, clean-shaven, wearing a dark suit that looked expensive. I didn't recognize him. Marta, Juliana said. Her voice was calm, too calm for someone who just buried her husband. This is Rodrigo. He's helping me with some legal matters. I nodded, still dazed. Legal matters. Of course. There would be paperwork. Insurance. The house. Marcelo had mentioned once that he'd put the house in his name for tax reasons. I hadn't thought much of it at the time. Let's go back to your place, Juliana said. We need to go over a few things. Important things. I didn't want to. I wanted to stay there by the casket, for as long as they'd let me. But my sister touched my arm. Go ahead, Marta, she said gently. I'll make sure everything's taken care of here. I rode in Rodrigo's car. A black sedan. Leather seats. Smelled like cologne. Juliana sat in the front. Neither of them spoke. The radio played low, some pop song I didn't recognize. I stared out the window at the gray sky, the streets blurring past. My chest ached. My throat was tight. When we got to the house, Juliana didn't wait. She walked in like she owned it, Rodrigo right behind her. I followed, still numb, still lost. We sat in the living room, the same room where Marcelo used to do his homework, where we watched TV together on Friday nights, where I taught him to play chess. Juliana pulled a folder from her bag, a sleek leather bag that probably cost more than my monthly pension, and set it on the coffee table. She opened it. Inside were documents, official-looking, stamped, notarized. Marcelo gave me power of attorney 6 months ago, she said. Her voice was steady, cold, businesslike. This house is in his name, which means legally it's mine now. I blinked. The words didn't make sense. What? You have 30 days to vacate the premises. The words hit me like a fist to the stomach. I stared at her. This is my house. I've lived here for 40 years. It's in Marcelo's name, she repeated, her tone patient, as if explaining something to a slow child. He transferred it 2 years ago for tax purposes. You signed the papers. Remember? I did remember. Vaguely. Marcelo had brought papers to the house one afternoon. He said it was just paperwork. Something about taxes and inheritance laws. That it didn't change anything. That I would always live here. He promised me. But Marcelo said, Marcelo's dead. Her voice was flat, final. And according to this power of attorney, everything he owned now belongs to me, including this house. I looked at Rodrigo. He was watching me with cold, calculating eyes. Not sympathetic, not uncomfortable, just waiting. This can't be legal, I said, my voice shaking. He wouldn't do this to me. It's perfectly legal, Rodrigo said. His voice was smooth, professional. I've reviewed all the documents. Everything is in order. Juliana stood. Rodrigo stood with her. 30 days, Marta. I'll have my lawyer contact you with the details. You'll need to remove all your belongings by then. Where am I supposed to go? She shrugged. That's not my problem. Maybe your sister can take you in. They walked out. The door clicked shut. I sat there, alone, staring at the folder on the table, My hands were shaking. The house was silent. Outside, a dog barked. The sound felt distant, like it was coming from another world. I picked up the folder, flipped through the papers. There were stamps, signatures, Marcelo's signature, or something that looked like it. I didn't cry. Not yet. I just sat there, trying to understand what had just happened, trying to understand how my life had collapsed so completely in the span of 2 weeks. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, my mind racing. How could Marcelo do this? How could he leave me with nothing? It didn't make sense. He loved me. I knew he did. But the documents were real. The signatures were there. Maybe I'd been a burden. Maybe he'd resented me. Maybe Juliana had convinced him that I was holding him back, that he needed to cut ties. The thoughts circled like vultures. Then, around 3 a.m, I remembered something. A week before he died, Marcelo had come to visit. He looked terrible that day, thinner than ever, exhausted. His eyes were bloodshot, his hands trembling. He sat at the kitchen table, barely touching the coffee I made him. We talked about nothing, the weather, a TV show. But the whole time he seemed distracted, nervous. Then, as he was leaving, he stopped at the door. He turned back to me. "Mom," he said. His voice was urgent, scared. "If something happens to me, don't talk like that," I interrupted. He grabbed my hand. His grip was weak, but desperate. "Just listen. If something happens, there's a pen drive. In my jacket. The gray one. I hid it in the inside pocket. Don't let Juliana find it." "Marcelo? What are you talking about?" He looked at me, and for a moment, I saw tears in his eyes. "I love you, Mom. I'm sorry. For everything." Then he left. I thought he was being paranoid. Dramatic. He'd been so stressed, so sick. I figured he wasn't thinking clearly. Now, lying in the dark, those words echoed in my head. A pen drive. In his jacket. I got up. My heart was pounding. I went to the closet where I kept Marcelo's things. The clothes he'd left here over the years, the jacket he'd worn that last visit. I'd brought it home from the hospital. I couldn't bear to throw it away. The gray jacket hung there, looking exactly as he'd left it. I reached into the inside pocket. My fingers brushed something small and hard. I pulled it out. A pen drive. Black. Unmarked. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold it. I went to the living room, turned on my old laptop, the one Marcelo had bought me 5 years ago, and plugged in the pen drive. The screen filled with folders, videos, audio files, documents, dozens of them. My heart pounded so hard I thought it might burst. I clicked the first video. Marcelo's face appeared on the screen. He was sitting in his car. The camera was propped on the dashboard, shaky and angled awkwardly. The lighting was dim, late evening maybe. His eyes were red. He looked like he'd been crying. "Mom," he said, his voice breaking. "If you're watching this, I'm probably dead. And it wasn't an accident." The words hit me like a physical blow. I stopped breathing. Juliana is poisoning me. Time stopped. The room spun. I gripped the edge of the desk to keep from falling. "I started getting sick about 8 months ago," he continued, his voice shaking. "I thought it was stress. The doctors thought it was stress. But then I found receipts, hidden in her purse, small amounts of arsenic. She was buying it online, mixing it into my food, my coffee." He looked away from the camera, wiping his eyes with the back of his hand. When he looked back, his face was twisted with pain. I didn't want to believe it. I thought maybe there was another explanation. Maybe she was using it for something else. But then I started paying attention. Every time I ate something she made, I got sicker. Every time I drank coffee she poured, I ended up vomiting. His voice cracked. I recorded everything after that. I have proof. Audio of her talking to Rodrigo. He's her lover, Mom. They've been together for over a year. They're planning to take everything. The house, my savings, my life insurance. They forged documents. The power of attorney you're probably looking at right now? It's fake. I never signed it. I never gave her any of that. He pressed his palms against his eyes, his shoulders shaking. I wanted to go to the police, but I was scared. I thought if I confronted her, maybe she'd stop. Maybe I could fix this without destroying everything. But she didn't stop. It's getting worse. I'm so tired, Mom. I can barely think. I can barely function. Every day is harder than the last. He looked directly at the camera, his eyes pleading. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry I let this happen. I should have been stronger. I should have protected you. But please, please use this. Go to the police. Show them everything. Don't let her win. Don't let her take the house. Don't let her take anything." His voice dropped to a whisper. "I love you, Mom. I'm sorry." The video ended. I sat there frozen, staring at the black screen. The laptop hummed softly in the silence. Outside, the first light of dawn was beginning to creep through the curtains. My son, my boy, she killed him. The thought was so monstrous, so incomprehensible, that for a moment I couldn't process it. Then the rage came, hot and blinding. It burned through the grief, through the shock, through everything. I clicked another file, an audio recording. The date stamp showed it was from 5 months ago. Juliana's voice, sharp and clear. "He's almost gone, Rodrigo. Another week, maybe 2. Then we're free." A man's voice. "Rodrigo." Smooth, casual. "And the old lady? She'll be out in 30 days. I've got the documents ready. She signed over the house 2 years ago. Marcelo convinced her it was for taxes. Stupid woman didn't even read what she was signing." Laughter. Cold. Cruel. It made my skin crawl. "Then the house is ours," Juliana continued. "We sell it, split the money, and we're set. New life. No more pretending to love that pathetic man." "You sure the poison won't show up? Arsenic in small doses looks like heart failure, especially with someone who's been stressed and sick for months. No one will question it." More laughter. I closed the laptop. My whole body was shaking, not from fear, from rage, from a fury so deep and so complete that I didn't recognize myself. But underneath it all, something else, something hard and cold and calculating. Determination. I wasn't going to let them win. If you've made it this far, please subscribe to our channel. Leave a like. It's so important to us. It shows YouTube that this content matters to you. And it does matter. Because stories like this, they need to be heard. They need to be told. And together we can make sure justice isn't just a word. The next morning, I called a lawyer. Not just any lawyer. Helen Acosta. She'd been a student of mine 30 years ago. Brilliant girl. Sharp as a knife. She'd grown up poor, worked her way through law school on scholarships and part-time jobs. I'd helped her when I could. Extra tutoring, reference letters, even a little money when things got desperate. She never forgot. She sent me a card every year on Teacher's Day. Now she ran a small firm downtown, specializing in family law and fraud cases. If anyone could help me, it was Helena. "Marta?" Her voice on the phone was warm, surprised. "Is everything okay?" "No," I said. My voice was steadier than I expected. "I need your help. It's urgent." "Of course. Can you come to my office today?" "I'll be there in an hour." I took a taxi downtown. The city rushed past the window. People going to work, living their normal lives, completely unaware that my entire world had shattered. I clutched my purse in my lap. Inside was the pen drive, the evidence, Marcelo's last gift to me. Helena's office was on the 3rd floor of an older building, small but professional. Her assistant showed me in immediately. Helena stood when I entered. She was in her early 50s now, her hair cut short, wearing a sharp business suit, but her eyes were still kind. She hugged me. "I heard about Marcelo," she said softly. "I'm so sorry, Marta." "Thank you." I sat down across from her desk. "But that's why I'm here. It wasn't a heart attack." Her expression shifted, became focused. "Tell me everything." I told her. About Juliana's ultimatum. About the pen drive. About the videos and audio files. About Marcelo's accusations of poisoning. As I spoke, Helena's face grew darker, harder. When I finished, she was silent for a long moment. "Do you have the pen drive with you?" I pulled it from my purse and handed it to her. She plugged it into her computer. For the next hour, she watched the videos, listened to the audio files, read through the documents Marcelo had collected, receipts, emails, text message screenshots. When she finished, she sat back in her chair and exhaled slowly. "This is substantial," she said. "This is a criminal case. We need to go to the police." "Will they believe me?" I asked. The fear crept back in. "Juliana has documents, signatures. She looks like the grieving widow. I'm just the bitter old mother-in-law." Helena shook her head. "These recordings are solid, and if the power of attorney is forged, which I believe it is, we can prove it. But we need to be strategic. We need to copy everything, secure the evidence in multiple locations, and we need a forensic analysis of Marcelo's body. My stomach turned. Exhumation? She nodded. It's the only way to definitively prove poisoning. Arsenic stays in the system for months, even years. If it's there, we'll find it. I took a breath. The thought of digging up my son's body, of disturbing his rest, made me feel sick, but I didn't have a choice. Okay, I said. Let's do it. Helena moved fast. She was like a force of nature. Within hours, she'd made 3 copies of the pen drive and stored them in separate locations. One in her office safe, one in a bank deposit box, one with a colleague in another city. She filed a motion for exhumation with the court, citing new evidence of foul play. She contacted a toxicologist, Dr. Silveira, one of the best forensic experts in São Paulo, specializing in poisoning cases. She also contacted a handwriting analyst to examine the power of attorney documents. Within 5 days, we had a court order for exhumation. They exhumed Marcelo's body on a cold, gray morning in early October. I wasn't there. I couldn't be. Helena went instead, along with Dr. Silveira and his forensic team. I waited at my sister's house. I'd been staying with her since Juliana's ultimatum. I couldn't bear to be in my own home, knowing she might show up at any moment. I sat on the couch, my phone clutched in my hand, staring at the screen. The hours dragged. Each minute felt like an eternity. Finally, at 3 p.m, Helena called. Marta. Her voice was tight, controlled, but I could hear the anger underneath. The preliminary tests are positive. Very high levels of arsenic in the tissue samples. Bone, hair, organs. This is homicide. Deliberate, sustained poisoning over several months. I closed my eyes. Part of me had hoped, desperately, foolishly, that Marcelo had been wrong, that it was all a misunderstanding. But no, my son was murdered. Slowly, painfully, while I sat in my house, oblivious. What happens now? I whispered. Now we go to the police. With everything. The videos, the audio, the toxicology report, the forensic evidence. They'll have no choice but to open a criminal investigation. And the house? We'll fight the eviction. The power of attorney is almost certainly forged. The handwriting analyst is working on it now, but that's secondary. First, we get justice for Marcelo. 2 days later, we sat in the police station, across from Detective Luis Carvalho. He was middle-aged, with graying hair and tired eyes that had seen too much. But when Helena laid out the evidence, those eyes sharpened. He watched Marcelo's videos without saying a word. His jaw tightened. When the video ended, he sat in silence for a moment. Jesus, he muttered finally. Helena presented the audio recordings next, then the toxicology report, then the receipts and documents Marcelo had collected. When she finished, Detective Carvalho leaned back in his chair and rubbed his face. This is substantial, he said. But I need to be honest with you. Proving poisoning is difficult. Defense lawyers will argue contamination, mishandling of evidence, alternative explanations, and we need to verify the forgery claim. We need to build an airtight case. So what do you suggest? Helena asked. We move carefully. We set up surveillance on Juliana and Rodrigo. We get warrants for their phone records, their financial records, their communications. We bring in Rodrigo for questioning. If we can flip him, get him to testify against her, this case becomes much stronger. He looked at me. His expression softened. Mrs. Marta, I know this is incredibly hard, but we're going to get justice for your son. I promise you that. I nodded. I didn't trust my voice. The investigation took 3 weeks. 3 agonizing weeks where I barely slept, barely ate. Every day I waited for news. Every night I lay awake thinking about Marcelo, about his last days, about how scared he must have been. Detectives watched Juliana. They tracked her movements, monitored her calls, followed her to meetings with Rodrigo. They found more evidence. Bank transfers from Marcelo's account to Rodrigo's. Large sums, transferred over the past 6 months. Emails between Juliana and Rodrigo discussing the sale of my house, calculating their profits. Text messages, cold, calculating, discussing Marcelo like he was a problem to be solved, not a human being. He's getting suspicious. One message from Juliana read, "Just a little longer," Rodrigo replied. Then it's over. The handwriting analyst confirmed what we suspected. Marcelo's signature on the power of attorney was forged. A skilled forgery. but a forgery nonetheless. The pressure points were wrong. The letter formations didn't match authentic samples. Detective Carvalho called me one evening. "We're moving in tomorrow morning. We have enough for arrest warrants. We'll take them both into custody." My heart pounded. "Where?" "At your house. Juliana's been staying there, hasn't she?" She had. She'd moved in 2 days after the funeral, claiming she needed to sort through Marcelo's things and prepare the property for sale. I'd been too grief-stricken, too shocked to fight back. "Yes," I said. "Good. Be there at 10 a.m. We'll need you to let us in." That night, I didn't sleep at all. I sat at my sister's kitchen table drinking tea, watching the clock. At dawn, I showered and dressed carefully. Black pants, a simple blouse. I wanted to look dignified, strong. Helena picked me up at 9:30. We drove to the house in silence. When we pulled up, I saw 4 police cars already waiting down the street. Detective Carvalho stepped out of one. 6 officers were with him. "Ready?" he asked. I nodded. We walked to the door. My door. The door I'd walked through thousands of times. The door Marcelo had run through as a child, his backpack bouncing, calling out, "Mom, I'm home." I used my key. The lock clicked. The sound felt impossibly loud. We pushed inside. Juliana was in the living room, sitting on my couch, scrolling through her phone. She was wearing expensive yoga clothes, her hair pulled back in a sleek ponytail. She looked comfortable. At home. She looked up when we entered. Her eyes widened. "Marta, what?" "Juliana Mendez," Detective Carvalho said, stepping forward. His voice was formal, cold. "You're under arrest for the murder of Marcelo Oliveira, fraud, forgery, and conspiracy to commit theft." Her face went white. The phone slipped from her hand. "What? No. This is insane. This is—" "You have the right to remain silent," Carvalho continued. 2 officers moved toward her. She tried to stand, but her legs seemed to give out. They caught her, pulled her arms behind her back. Handcuffs clicked around her wrists. The sound was the most beautiful thing I'd ever heard. "You can't do this." Juliana's voice rose, panicked now. "I didn't do anything. She's lying. The old woman is crazy." "We have evidence," Carvalho said. "Videos, audio recordings, forensic proof." "You're done." Juliana's eyes found mine. For a moment, I saw real fear. Then it shifted to rage. "You did this," she hissed. "You bitter old bitch. You couldn't stand to see him happy with me. You poisoned him against me. You—" "Enough," one of the officers said, pulling her toward the door. As they led her past me, she spat at my feet. I didn't move. I just stared at her. The woman who killed my son. The woman who smiled at me at the wedding. Who called me mom. Who whispered poison into my boy's coffee while he trusted her. They took her out to the police car. Through the window, I watched them put her in the back seat. Detective Carvalho turned to me. "Rodrigo's being arrested at his apartment right now. Both of them will be held without bail pending trial." "Thank you," I whispered. He nodded. "We'll need you to come to the station later to give a formal statement. But for now, this is your house again, Mrs. Marta. She has no claim to it." I looked around the living room. My living room. It looked different. Colder. There were things here that weren't mine. Expensive furniture Juliana had bought. Ugly modern art on the walls. But it was mine again. Helena put her hand on my shoulder. "It's over," she said softly. But it wasn't. Not yet. The trial lasted 3 months. It became a media sensation. Daughter-in-law poisons husband for inheritance. Black Widow of São Paulo. The arsenic plot. The headlines were everywhere. Newspapers. TV news. Online forums. Reporters camped outside the courthouse. They tried to interview me. I refused. Helena spoke for me. The prosecution was led by Dr. Renata Fonseca, a sharp, no-nonsense woman in her 40s. She presented the case methodically, piece by piece, building an unshakable foundation. First, the toxicology report. Dr. Silveira testified that the levels of arsenic in Marcelo's body were consistent with chronic poisoning over a period of 6 to 8 months. Not accidental exposure. Deliberate, sustained dosing. Then, Marcelo's videos. They played them in the courtroom. I sat in the gallery and watched the jurors' faces as they listened to my son describe his own murder. Several of them cried. One woman covered her mouth with her hand, her eyes wide with horror. The audio recordings came next. Juliana and Rodrigo's voices, cold and calculating, discussing Marcelo's death like a business transaction. The financial evidence, bank transfers, forged documents, emails planning the sale of my house, the handwriting analysis. The expert testified that Marcelo's signature on the power of attorney had been forged. He showed enlarged images of the signature, pointing out the inconsistencies. The prosecution built a narrative that was impossible to deny. Juliana had married Marcelo for money. When she realized his assets were limited and that his mother owned property, she'd begun planning. She'd brought in Rodrigo, her lover. Together, they'd forged documents. And when Marcelo started to suspect, when he started getting sick and asking questions, they'd accelerated the poisoning. The defense tried to fight back. Juliana's lawyer, an expensive attorney hired by her family, argued that the evidence was circumstantial, that Marcelo had been depressed, that the videos were fabricated, that the arsenic could have come from environmental sources, but it was weak, desperate. Then the prosecution played their final card. Rodrigo, faced with overwhelming evidence, had taken a plea deal. He testified against Juliana. He sat in the witness box, pale and shaking, and told everything. How they'd met at a gym 18 months ago, how they'd started an affair, how Juliana had complained about Marcelo, how boring he was, how little money he made, how his mother was sitting on valuable property, how she'd proposed the plan, slowly poison Marcelo, make it look natural, forge the power of attorney, take the house, sell it, start a new life together. Rodrigo described buying the arsenic online, described watching Juliana mix it into Marcelo's food, described waiting for him to die. The courtroom was silent when he finished. Even Juliana's lawyer looked shaken. Juliana sat at the defense table, her face a mask. She didn't cry, didn't react, just stared straight ahead. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. When they came back, the forewoman stood. We find the defendant, Juliana Mendez, guilty on all counts. The courtroom erupted. Juliana's mother screamed. Reporters scrambled for their phones. I sat still, my hands folded in my lap. Helena squeezed my hand. The judge set sentencing for 2 weeks later. On a rainy afternoon in November, almost 6 months after Marcelo's funeral, I sat in the courtroom and listened to the judge read the sentence. For the murder of Marcelo Oliveira, committed with premeditation and extreme cruelty, I sentence you to 28 years in prison. For fraud, forgery, and conspiracy, an additional 5 years, to be served concurrently. Juliana didn't react. They let her out in handcuffs. She didn't look at me. Rodrigo, because of his cooperation, received 15 years. I stood outside the courthouse afterward, rain falling softly around me. Helena stood beside me, holding an umbrella. How do you feel? She asked. I thought about it. Empty, I said finally. But lighter. That's normal. She'll spend the rest of her good years in prison, I said. She'll be an old woman when she gets out. If she gets out. She will be. I looked at Helena. Thank you. For everything. She hugged me. You did this, Marta. You fought for him. You didn't give up. But I had given up. For weeks after his death, I'd been ready to walk away. To accept the lies. To let them win. It was Marcelo who hadn't given up. Even dying, even terrified, he'd fought back. He'd left me the truth. And I'd finished what he started. 6 months passed. Winter came and went. Spring arrived, bringing warmth back to São Paulo. The house was mine again, legally and completely. Juliana's appeal was denied. So was Rodrigo's. They would spend decades behind bars. I moved back into the house. At first it was hard. Every room held memories. Some beautiful, some painful. I saw Marcelo everywhere. At the kitchen table, on the couch, walking through the door. I thought about selling it, moving somewhere smaller, somewhere without so much history. But then I had another idea. It came to me one afternoon as I was sorting through Marcelo's things. Clothes I'd been putting off donating, books he'd loved, photographs from his childhood. I found an old notebook from when he was 10. Inside, he'd written an essay for school. The prompt had been, "What do you want to do when you grow up?" His answer, "I want to help people who are hurting." I sat on his bed, the notebook in my lap, and cried. Then I called Helena. "I want to turn the house into a shelter," I said. "For women. Women escaping violence. Women who have nowhere else to go." There was a pause. Then, "Marta, that's beautiful. But it's a big undertaking. Are you sure?" "I'm sure. It took months to set up. Permits, renovations, building codes, fundraising, but Helena helped. So did others. Teachers I used to work with, parents of former students, people who heard the story, Marcelo's story, and wanted to help. We renovated the bedrooms, added a second bathroom, updated the kitchen. We installed security cameras and reinforced the locks. We partnered with social workers, therapists, legal advocates. We opened the doors a year after Marcelo's death. We called it Casa Marcelo. The first woman who stayed with us was 24. Her name was Camila. She had a black eye, a broken wrist, and 3 cracked ribs. Her boyfriend had put her in the hospital twice. She had nowhere to go, no family, no money, no hope. I gave her Marcelo's old room. I made her tea, the same herbal tea I used to make for him when he was sick. I sat with her while she cried. "You're safe here," I told her. "As long as you need." She looked at me with hollow eyes. "Why are you doing this?" I thought about Marcelo, about the pen drive, about the fight he couldn't finish. "Because someone did it for me once," I said. "And now I'm passing it on." Camilla stayed for 3 months. We connected her with a therapist, a lawyer who helped her file a restraining order, a job training program. She found work at a bakery, saved money, found a small apartment. Before she left, she hugged me. "Thank you," she whispered. "You saved my life." I held her tight. "No, you saved your own life. I just gave you a place to rest." After Camila, there was Beatrice, then Fernanda, then Anna, then Maria. Each woman brought her own story, her own pain, her own strength. We didn't fix everything. We couldn't, but we gave them space, safety, time to heal. And slowly, the house transformed. It wasn't a tomb anymore. It wasn't haunted by loss. It was alive. I'm 70 now. Casa Marcelo has been open for 2 years. We've helped 32 women so far. Some stay for weeks, some for months. All of them leave stronger than when they arrived. I think about Juliana sometimes. She's in a prison 2 hours north of São Paulo. I've never visited. I never will. I heard through Helena that she tried to appeal again last year. It was denied. I don't hate her anymore. I don't feel anything for her at all. She made her choices. Now she lives with them. I think about Marcelo more. Every day. I talk to him sometimes. Late at night when the house is quiet and the women are sleeping. I tell him about the people we've helped. I tell him about the lives we've changed. I tell him he would be proud. I think he would be. This house. This place that almost became my prison, that almost became Juliana's trophy, is now a sanctuary. A place of second chances. A place where pain is transformed into hope. Where victims become survivors. Where endings become beginnings. That's Marcelo's legacy. Not the money, not the property, not even the justice we fought for, but the lives we've touched, the women we've saved, the hope we've given. One of the women who stayed with us last year, Daniela, came back to visit last month. She brought her daughter, a little girl with bright eyes and a wide smile. "I wanted her to meet you," Daniela said. "I wanted her to see that good people exist, that not everyone is cruel." I made them lunch. We sat in the kitchen, the same kitchen where Marcelo used to do his homework, and talked about the future. As they were leaving, the little girl hugged my legs. "Thank you for helping my mama," she said. I knelt down, looked into her eyes. "Your mama is very brave, and so are you." After they left, I stood in the doorway and watched them walk down the street. The sun was setting, painting the sky orange and gold, and I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Peace, not happiness, not yet. Maybe never completely. The grief is still there. It always will be. I still miss my son every single day. I still see his face when I close my eyes. I still hear his voice in the quiet moments. But alongside the grief, there's purpose. There's meaning. There's hope. And maybe, in the end, that's what justice really looks like. Not just punishment for the guilty, but transformation for the survivors. Not just an ending, but a new beginning. Marcelo gave me the truth. I gave him justice. And together we're giving others hope. That's enough. That's more than enough. If this story touched you, if it reminded you that even in the darkest moments there's a way forward, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Share it with someone who's fighting their own battle, who needs to remember that good people exist, that justice is possible, that hope is real. And if you haven't already, subscribe to this channel. Some stories deserve to be heard. Some fights, no matter how hard, no matter how long, are worth finishing. Because in the end, love is stronger than hate. Truth is stronger than lies. And hope is the strongest thing of all.